Welcome here to Viewpoints. I am your host, Jordan Voyles. Today we're going to be talking and discussing about identity, and I'm sitting here with Dr. John Gerlach. So, John, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, let's just talk about it because I think this is one of the real key questions everybody has. New York Times had a deal recently where they said, this is the year that we're obsessed about our identity. And I think it's really true. I've seen it a lot with people, anytime, I'm certified in a couple tests that you can take personality, and people love to take those tests and to find out. I remember, we did that in staff. We had different colors.
Yeah.
I think you were pink.
We've done so many, I don't even recall what color I am.
But basically, I think we really are into that. We really want to know it, but I think we're also real confused about it.
Yeah.
And I think one of the key things that we find in Psalm 8, which we're going to look at, but I also want to talk about kind of what our world and our culture says about identity. So let's start there, and then we'll come back to Psalm 8, because I think this is a question we all need to deal with and all need to figure out. So let's talk about identity. So let's talk about Jordan Voyles' identity. If you were to name, just give 4 words that describe, your identity, just you specifically, like what would you say? Give it your best shot.
Bodybuilder.
Steroids.
Yeah, all of that.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know. I've thought about this a lot. Talking with other worship pastors, we've talked about like what is it the things that really describe who we are, and if we're not really careful with how we want to describe ourselves, we can get into this like main character mode.
Oh yeah. Like trying to be a main character.
Yeah, like I am a worship pastor. I'm a leader. I'm this. I'm a world changer. And it's like people really don't care about that at the end of the day. They really just care about how you made them feel. And we were discussing at this last conference I went to, which was really helpful for me because I've been struggling with that of like, what is it that I want to be remembered for? And it was just talking about it's better to be the supporting cast member rather than trying to be this main character. So, if you were to ask me that question 2-3 months ago, I'd be like, oh man, I would want to be known as a leader, a worship pastor, a guy that's really good at hockey, all these things that you want to be known for. But at the end of the day, I think I just want to be known as someone who loved his wife well, loved his family well, and a good Christian. And so, yeah, I would say that most recently that my mind has changed on a lot of that stuff of our identity. And so it's more trying to be supporting cast rather than this main big character role, if that makes sense.
Interesting.
So it's interesting that you would ask me that because that's kind of something that I've been
So you said husband and good Christian.
Yeah.
No, that's I think that's pretty great when you think about it.
What about you? I got to ask the same question to you.
Hockey player.
I would love to see you on that. Will too, back there. I would love to see Will too.
No, my ankles can't do it. Basically, I think for me, it's always been I want to be faithful. What I want to be, what I want my identity to be is to be truly faithful, and that's spiritual, but it's also as a husband, as a father, in all those ways to be faithful. I think. I think you're right. We can kind of come up with a different kind of list, and we have different roles. Roles would be a whole different answer, because you have so many roles as far as relationships. You're father, husband, you have, I'm an uncle, I'm all that kind of stuff too. But I really think at the end of the day, your identity is real key to.
Yeah.
So that'd be one question to follow up your list. Okay, so and you kind of made that change and you kind of thought that through. What was the thing that really stood out to you? What was the main reason you made that change? I mean, that came to your attention. What was the kind of like, okay, that's not a good list. What made you think that's the other old list wasn't a good list?
Well, I think a lot of times when you try to be the main character, and I love that saying because a lot of times it just leaves you empty. And then you begin to go like, well, why am I in the position that I'm in if it's not for Christ?
Yeah.
There's that passage that talks about King David, his gifts brought him before kings. And you look back, you go, well, what was that gift? Well, it was music that helped King David come before Saul. But ultimately, the whole purpose of that was to glorify Christ. And I think when we're not doing that with the positions that we're in, and we're making those positions our identity, it just leaves us empty.
Mm.
And that's kind of where I've found myself in years past, and most recently. It's like, why am I here? What's the purpose? It's to be a supporting casserole for Christ. And so that's kind of what led me down that journey. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, that helps.
Question,
I think the why is a real good thing there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's talk about a little bit about the world and the perspective we get all around us all the time. And I think there's a couple clear messages. And I think one clear message is your identity should be what you acquire, what you have, what you own, your stuff, your position, your power. And you hit on why that one's a problem. And I think the reason that's a problem is that it leaves you empty because it can be taken away from you. You can lose that. And, but I mean, we see that all the time where people go, it's what I want to acquire. But the problem is also that comes in, and I don't hear many people talk about this very much, but we kind of want different things we want two things that don't go together sometimes. Like, somebody says, I want a career, but I want to have all these relationships, or I want to be married and I want to have a career. And they go, but I don't know if I don't know if I can do both of them.
You can't manage that.
Yeah. So you get, if that's what you're going for, that's going to conflict at times. Another one that I see a whole lot, and I want to see where you've seen this one, and that is, I am what I feel. I mean, I feel like this is who I am, so this is who I am. Have you seen that one or heard? I mean,
yeah, absolutely. Especially in today's world.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's kind of, you talked about it not too long ago, I believe, on this podcast about like my truth. Well, that's my truth. Well, I feel like that kind of goes in the same category of that. It's like, well, I feel this way, but feelings change, and going back to what you said before about, making your career choice or who you think you are, your identity. Well, if I thought that way about where I am now, and I'm like, well, worship pastor is my identity. If I get in a car wreck tomorrow and I lose my vocals, do I not have identity anymore? That's a scary thing. And I think that can go with what you're saying with the way people feel about themselves. Well, I feel like I'm this way. Well, that could change tomorrow. And so that's kind of how I view that.
I saw this real vividly on a talk show one time, and actually there was a mother and their 17-year-old son were on this talk show, and the whole issue was he wants to have a sex change operation. What do y'all think about it? And the only question that was asked, and the only concern by the mother and the audience was, is this his true feelings? Does he feel like he really wants to do that? Because, he may change his mind. That was the only concern was, does he really feel this? And I don't know about you, but, this one to me, the biggest problem with this one is, gosh, I feel one way one day and I feel a different way the next day. My feelings are all over the map all the time. There's not this true feeling that there's very few true feelings that have stuck with me my whole life. I mean, I think about like, okay, let's take you. All right, now, how old are you right now?
I am 30.
I mean, I forgot you were that old. Man, you're old. Okay, so when you look back at your 20-year-old self, was that 20-year-old self
last year?
Yeah, last year. That 20-year-old self, do you see some dumb things that 20-year-old was doing?
Yeah. And you've helped me identify those things.
It's my job to try to make sure you clearly see.
Of course. Of course. I think that's part of, feeling and emotions grow with maturity, and, you change things. Oh, I didn't see it that way. Well, my feelings change.
Yeah.
So absolutely. I think 20s are probably the best years for that, to learn different things.
Yeah. But okay, from my perspective, and I'm a little bit older than you, I'm like, what, 40s?
Yeah.
41. And so, 41. And so I look back at that and I say, man, I was pretty much an idiot when I was 20. Right. And then I go, but I was when I was my 40-year-old self thought that about my 30-year-old self.
I see.
And it keeps going. I mean, and so what does that really mean? our feelings, I mean, and a lot of that's tied up with feelings. It's just, I think that's such a
Yeah,
shaky foundation to
absolutely.
say what's your true feeling. I don't know that we have true feelings,
Mhm.
I mean, it
Yeah.
just,
Yeah, what would be one thing for the listener? Maybe they're in their car driving, or maybe they're listening to this at work. But what would be one thing that you'd want to leave them with when we're talking about our identity? And you preached about it Sunday.
yeah.
Maybe one thing you'd want to leave them with.
Yeah, let's talk about Psalm 8. So Psalm 8 says basically this. He says, when I look at the night sky and see the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars you set in place, what are mere mortals that you should think about them, human beings that you should care for them? And I think the key thing here is that our identity is that if we could see ourselves as God sees us,
Mhm.
that changes everything. I remember the moment in my life when I first got a glimpse. I'm not saying I can actually see this the
Mhm.
same way God can, but a glimpse of how God saw me. And it was so different than how I saw myself.
Yeah.
But that was my true identity. I was loved. I was forgiven. I had a purpose. I had a plan. It was the gospel identity
Mhm.
where Christ changes everything. I'm a new person. I'm carrying around a lot of baggage, a lot of junk, but God sees me past all that. And I've just leave with the listener that, you know, what a transformation a gospel identity brings into your life if you allow yourself to be seen as God sees you.
That's good. Pastor John, thank you so much. So, listener, we pray that this has been helpful and that you would join us next time. God bless.